Welcome to another episode of Merill Expert Talk, the channel where we discuss everything from the stock market to the global economy and obviously technology today, will events will affect your investment. I'm your host, Marc, fund manager at Merill Funds. I've managed money from Switzerland, London, finally Malta for over 2 decades. Today we are not in Valletta office, but in a charming village of Nanikan, a few minutes away from Zurich. We have a special guest and expert, and I should say a fintech expert, on our channel. We like to speak about technology. Damien often is our guest when we speak about digital assets, but today we want to share an exciting investment journey with our new fintech expert, and we want to welcome Christophe or Chris. Thank you. Before we start our journey, I will say our fintech journey, let me show you on the screen the classical disclaimer. Obviously, you need to do your homework on that side. At the end of the video, we will see the full one if you're interested to see. So a few seconds on the disclaimer and we come back to you, Chris. So let me introduce you to Christophe Laarman. Sorry for my bad pronunciation. Unfortunately, as a native French speaker, France did maybe fantastically well in the celebrating of the Olympic, but not in the education system to teach a foreign language. I apologize to my high school English teacher. So now let's return to Switzerland, where I spent much of my career and my life. And I want to welcome you, Chris, and thank you very much for welcoming us here for Merill Expert Talk in your place near Zurich. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm delighted and I'm very excited for today.
Thank you very much. So, Chris, you start your journey back 2010, 2011, and as you told me, you've been to UK when you learn, I will say, from Soviet planifications to how's the things doing the transitions to how we are now on the capitalist side, and after that, it's dictating you to go in a certain directions. You used to work also for a company like a strategic company, intelligence strategic company. And your brother was like a founder of a company, and this is probably like where you started your journey, your entrepreneur journey. Maybe tell us more and maybe introduce yourself and what you did.
Yes, gladly. So I studied economics in Paris and in England, and as you said, I focused then on contemporary Russian and East European studies applied to economics and studying particularly the 1990s. And from before that, I had a keen interest for Central Europe and particularly Poland, because I had spent a year there as a child, a gap year. I always thought I would steer towards finance in Central Europe or something, because I knew Polish. I had learned also Russian at university, and so this was my interest. But things in life don't always go according to plan, and while in Paris, and my brother was desperate for someone to help him build this new, very promising company that he had founded, which was offering online publications about alternative remedies and natural health. I thought that it would probably be more interesting and offer me experience in much more diverse and very important, and I would learn skills that I would be able to reuse later in life, and would broaden my skill, my whole skills that I was wanting to build as a 20-year-old something, and so this is how it went.
Okay, thank you for this interesting introduction. So now let's go more into detail and what was your motivations back at that time?
Yes, my sources of inspiration at the time were mostly related to economics and political economy ideas and political philosophy. And we've always been in the family, I don't want to use the term free thinker because I think it's always difficult to realize who have influenced us in the beginning, but we liked controversial ideas, contrarian ideas, and this is something that has been very, in my childhood, present everywhere. And later in life, we were very interested in about the freedom of being able to express the freedom of speech and what the internet brought about, and this freedom and this ability to connect closely together thinkers, philosophers of modern time, and the general public. Everyone could go out and look for ideas like this. And so this is what I'm trying to say, is that this is the connection between this way of thinking that I had, and also the alternative medicine, the publishing, where we could bring research closer to the general public without having intermediaries. And so this is something that really gave, and the internet gave a push for this, and we could give people back the control over their own health by educating them directly.
So Chris, back 2010, 2011, you spoke about internet, and was the beginning to like the mass spray. I mean, like try to really having access to everyone getting information. So what I understand, it's like the beginning of your business model and the type of newsletter you wanted to say, correct?
Exactly.
So let's go more in detail, and for the audience, tell us more about this and what happened at that time.
Right. So the internet allowed us to talk to many people at once, and also create viral messages which would spread around and simplify greatly acquisition of new leads and new clients. And this was possible thanks to social media, which at the time weren't as controlled as they tend to be today. As you probably know, there's a lot of supervision now of all the ideas and all that's going on there, because of and so a lot of censorship, which wasn't that present back in the days. And so I would say that what the internet also allowed is it was massive, the impact and the way that the messages could be spread, but it really allowed us to understand and to start creating businesses with very narrow audiences, because let's face it, contrarian ideas in natural health are not a mainstream idea, but because of how widely we're able to spread the message, we were able to reach all the people across all the French-speaking world who were interested in this. And so this creates the scale that you need to grow a couple of tens of million euros a year business. And so this is creating all those small tribes, small communities of people with similar interests, or wanting to buy similar products, which were kind of niche. This is what the internet allowed to create and to grow.
So Chris, you spoke about freedom of speech, and often when you think about freedom of speech, you think about US, Martin Luther King, and etc. But I think your journey started also on that side, because you said that your brother was also a lobbyist, a political lobbyist, and you had the chance to go in US to discuss with some lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and that's probably one of the reasons and the technique they have been using to spread the message. So maybe tell us more.
Yes, so ever since I was a child, I was seeing, because I'm much younger than my brother, I was receiving at home all the fundraising efforts, so the mailing that we were getting, which were raising money for different causes, mostly conservative. And indeed, my brother had been doing this for years with immense success for different causes, mainly education, justice, but also defending small and medium entrepreneurs. And he had learned about it with, in fact, my uncle also. And both of them had been to many seminars in the USA because they were more advanced with these techniques of, how do you write a message which is compelling, which is calling for a donation, and how do you present the information in a way that's effective, and how do you calculate your return on investment when you send 100,000 envelopes to people, and how much money you can get, and then how the action that you can lead politically then to influence the country into a certain direction. So, kind of giving a more direct democracy. And so this is, he had been doing this for many years in France, and I think at some point he got a bit annoyed by the way that he was in constant battle with the not the elite, but the people who effectively were in power, which were not necessarily the government, but many of the French syndicates of teachers, of judges, and these people who were really ruining his reputation publicly, but also making it very difficult to make any progress, any change in those directions. And so at some point, while discussing with Americans about the different ways of using the same techniques of writing, persuading messages, sending out communications, raising awareness, and calling people to action, he uncovered another way of doing this. So there was the non-profit way, which was all the associations, but there was also a for-profit way, which was what we call the newsletter business, which is a direct response business. And the newsletter business, back in the days where internet wasn't a thing, a newsletter was basically a monthly printout, like a small magazine on a certain topic. It could be money, it could be gardening, it could be health remedies, and that were sent out to people. And the way that the reason I'm using the term direct response is that people were sending out mails to people saying, "Oh, would you like to receive a paid subscription about arthritis, for instance, how to cure arthritis using natural methods?" And people would say, "Yes, please," and then they send the money, and then they start receiving this newsletter. But naturally, this was very costly to all the marketing efforts to get a certain number, the sufficient number of subscribers for this business to be sustainable and profitable. But with the arrival of the internet, suddenly it all changed. And we could send, obviously, the paid product by the mail, but we could also just email a PDF, which has a very low marginal cost once you've created the PDF. And instead of sending mails to people's door, we could send emails because everyone started to have email addresses. So this really changed the dynamics and allowed for this kind of direct response businesses to revive and become really, I suppose, I'm not really sure about how big they were back in the days when there was no internet, but from maybe $1 to $10 million business in revenue, it could become more like a 10 to a couple of hundred million a year. And so this was a big shift, and my brother was able to take this turn in the 2010s in France, and I joined him for this journey, and this is where all my experience was from, and it was an incredible ride.
So, Chris, very interesting approach, and I think it's interesting. So, your target audience was the French speaking. You started your missions with the French speakers, and when you say French speaker, it's like beyond France, it's like Canada, Switzerland, Benelux, etc., etc. So, maybe for our audience, I mean, try to explain how you start zero, because often we get the idea of Bill Gates in his garage trying to build up some computer. But so I think it's a little bit different in your case. So maybe you can come and say how you started quite small and how you expand through the years.
Right. So it was similar to a startup because it was very disorganized, and we had a very crazy life, like you can imagine, working very long hours, and because we were so few in the company and there was so much demand for the product, it was just insane, and there was absolutely no structure in the company. And so when there's no structure, no IT department, no nothing, even the systems on which we were running were very, very basic, and we didn't have anyone. And so the demand was so fast that we didn't have time to hire and train people, and it was very hectic for this reason. But very differently to startups is that the company was making a lot of money. It was very profitable, and we didn't have to raise any money, and so this was a very different idea. So we have this crazy lifestyle of very quickly I moved into a flat where the office was, and so I was living in my office and mixing everything together, and that was I have great memories from this, and we had a lot of fun, really. But the main problem was that the company was too big for us. The revenue was too big for what we could handle, and so I had to put on my gloves and do anything. And because I'm very curious and I like to discover things and I'm not afraid to take upon challenges, I started handling the IT myself, teaching myself how to code, HTML, PHP, all this, and trying to make this thing run, making sure that our emails were delivered, which has always been the very difficult thing, and organizing all the marketing, the tracking, making sure that everything is recorded, that we can follow the results closely and look at the return rate for every email communication that we would send out. And so this is how it went, and gradually we started to find people. But even if the company was profitable, because we were inexperienced in building a company with 200 people like it is now, there was no one which we could hire, really, because all the talented people, when you tell them that you have this great startup which is completely disorganized, if they are talented people from a big corporation or a big consulting group, they are not going to leave that company to come and join you, because you have no credibility in a way. And so it's probably the same problem with startups, but we also didn't have really the glamour factor, because this business which I'm talking about is not at all about RP and PR, the public relations, and being able to have a company which looks very beautiful from the outside, but in fact, when from the inside is just burning cash every month. This was quite the opposite. And so people were like, how does this work? How do you make money? No, it's impossible. You cannot just make money sending emails. I've never seen this. It doesn't work. And so convincing someone smart and or maybe not, let's not say smart, but just qualified to join the company and start and help us organize this, structure this, was very, very complicated. On top of this, we decided to move to Switzerland at that time, and so trying to discover the way that things are done in Switzerland, where's the best place to grow such a company, where will you get the talent, I mean the people to come and work. It was a huge challenge, but also fascinating.
Yes, so Chris, quite interesting. And if I may ask the questions, why you decided at that time to move to Switzerland? Because I know you get some roots in Netherlands, also in Belgium, so it could be like a natural path for you moving out from Paris to Brussels or Amsterdam. Why you decided to move to Switzerland? That's really a question. Probably the audience are curious. Why Switzerland, and what's this decision you made?
Well, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and we have all seen how entrepreneurship is like in France, and what are the difficulties of hiring people and managing them. It is a really big challenge, and for this reason we decided not to stay there. My brother had already had quite disappointing experiences with this in prior ventures, and we were looking for somewhere French speaking, so that would exclude the Netherlands and Belgium. Well, my brother was living in Belgium at the time, and I don't think that I don't really know why we didn't choose what was against it, but certainly also the tax advantages in Switzerland were a big plus. And also, as a side note, we have family in Switzerland, and coming as a child in Switzerland, it had always been my dream to come and live here. And so being able to make it happen in my 20s, I was thrilled. I love the mountains, I love the way that life is organized here, and I think all the world is looking up to Switzerland for this. And it was the same for my brother. There are many downsides to living here. Many things are very complicated, impossible. It's not easy because most of our customers are in France, and so they pay in euro, and then you have to pay people here in Swiss francs, and so you're dependent on how the currencies evolved both, and also salaries are much higher here. But then you have more freedom with your employees to handle the company however you wish, and to steer it in the right direction. And so I wouldn't say that it's for everyone. Definitely, probably for a company which has a lot of profits and that is able to handle this. But it was great. We started out in Basel because we're doing health mostly, and it's the capital city of the pharma industry. It would help with the recruitment, but not really, because we were still looking for French speakers, and there in Basel they speak German, so it wasn't ideal. And then we moved to the Western Switzerland a few years later, and so the company is I think it's one of the big employers now in the city of Lausanne, and it's incredible what we've achieved.
So Chris, this transition from Paris to Basel and after finally to Lausanne, I mean, just give us some idea. I mean, you started in Paris, I mean, with like how many employees? And I mean, when you arrived in Basel, I mean, like you said, sorry, it was difficult to recruit like French speakers and etc. in Basel area. So now, I mean, like you say, it's one of the biggest employer here Switzerland and in Lausanne specifically. How's the thing started? So when you move from Paris, how many employees you get, and when you stay in Basel, and probably like explain to us also when you started in Lausanne, with how many employees, and how was like the idea about how the beginning started because the beginnings really started, it seems like your implementations more like in Lausanne than in Basel, correct?
That's right. While we were in Paris, the number of employees was very small and it was very chaotic. And then in Basel, it started to. I was still involved in almost all of the spheres of the company, all the operations. But we're starting to recruit. We had a team in Paris and another one in Basel, because it was so difficult to have people come over to Basel that we still had to keep one remote. And then we structured everything in Lausanne, and there the company became a bit bigger with all the. We started introducing all the characteristics of a bigger company, with maybe some things that for people who came while the company was very small, I would call inefficiencies, or things that are maybe necessary for a bigger company, but really we're wondering what is it bringing to the bottom line. And so this was a normal evolution, but I would say, and probably my brother would agree, that we have better memories of those first days, the first year in Paris and then the other 2 years in Basel, because of the atmosphere and how it was and how we were so close together. I think this was really the heyday. And so although the company was much more valuable when it was structured, once it became structured, and probably also the customer were happier because we were making fewer mistakes, we were delivering their orders in a better way, there were less payment errors or things like that. It was also a bit less personal and individual.
We hope you enjoyed this part one, and the idea was to provide you a little bit of concept and also what the journey was for Chris, starting his journey in Paris and moving to Basel and finally Lausanne in Switzerland. Now, on the part two, we'll go with you more in detail to understand the business model. I think it's always important. How's the cash flow I generated? I mean, at Merill, this is what we do on a daily basis when we try to analyze a company to understand what's behind the scene, how is the mechanism, and how's the cash flow. So Chris will come back on the part two to explain to you how he has been implementing this new business model, coming, like I say, in his journey coming from the US and even like a lobbyist, a political lobbyist, which was very interesting. So if you like it, if you like this content, I invite you to continue with us on the next part. Thank you very much for your attention. Now you will get the disclaimer. See you soon. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Marc.